Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today's video is the how do we rate our books tag. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And today we're going to be talking about how I rate my books. So it's going to be a bit more of a chatty video. It's based on a new tag by the lovely Emily from Novelle Novels, who also tagged me. And I say new, but this was new at the beginning of June. It's now the beginning of August and I'm only just getting round to it. Let's talk about how I rate my books. So the first question on this tag is, how often do you DNF and what makes you DNF? Now, I am trying to get better at DNFing. I've traditionally just waded through books forever. And one of the things that I used to do that was a bit like DNFing was just leave books that I was supposedly reading, like on my hypothetical currently reading shelf forever. I've tried to stop doing that. I do have one book that I have been currently reading since January, but I am definitely going back to that book. But DNFing, I've always found it a bit of a struggle. I've always thought, especially as a mystery reader, that I want to know how a book turns out, and I will give a book a lot of chances generally. But I have been getting better at identifying when I'm just not going to either like a book, or sometimes even if I'm going to like the book, but it's never going to be like a top read. But I do try to give them a chance, because I do think that some books like really come alive in the second half. There have been some books that I was obliged to read, like for the BookTube prize, for example, where you can't DNF the books, that have actually, after like 100 pages of reading a book that I think I dislike, have become really, really excellent books. So reluctant to DNF, but I do DNF, and I would say not all that often. I think I've maybe DNF'd 4 books this year, maybe. One of those was an audiobook that I DNF'd primarily because I wasn't getting on with the audiobook, and the other 3 were from my giant bookshelf and were just books that I didn't think were going to work for me. So trying to get better at DNFing, not that great at it. Question 2 is, do you rate books 1 star? Now, I looked into this when I saw a brilliant video by Jennifer Loves Books where she talked about all of her 1 star rated books and why she rated them 1 star. So I thought, oh, I'd love to do a video like that. Unfortunately, it seemed that I have not very often, if ever, rated a book 1 star. A 1 star book would probably be a book that I had DNF'd, and therefore I wouldn't be rating it. I don't rate my DNFs. I'm not a person who could possibly get like 75% of the way through a book and then DNF it. By that time, I feel like I've committed. I feel like I've wasted too much time on the book already to not finish. So I would have to actively dislike a book and finish it for it to get 1 star. I think I possibly rated a book 1 star during Garb August last year, which was Flowers in the Attic. I probably would have given it less than 1 star if possible, but yeah, just so tediously boring. But that was a book that I did finish that probably was a 1 star. But generally speaking, no, I don't really rate books 1 star. Question 3 is, what is a 2-star book for you? So for me, a 2-star book would be a book that I didn't really enjoy. It's hard to talk about the stars individually without talking about how they relate to the other stars, but if a book is 2 stars, it's done at least something to make me like it, but not enough for it to elevate to a 3-star, which is probably a book I like. To get 2 stars, there would either have to be like a big flaw in it for me that made me not enjoy it, or I thought the ending was so unsatisfying that it maybe got downgraded from a 3. I can't really think of an example, but yeah, I did have some 2-star books last year. Books that just don't ever go anywhere or pull anything off for me, would likely be classified as a 2-star. I don't rate books 2 stars very often either. I think sometimes 2-star books would also have been DNF'd. So if I'm rating a book 2 stars, then I've persevered with it, and it was therefore probably an okay book, but not a good book. So, is a 3-star book a good book for you, is question 4. And my answer to this is yes. If I've rated a book 3 stars, then I have liked it. I have enjoyed it in some measure. I would say that lately I've rated a lot of books 3.5 stars, so I think that that's a separate topic for a question later, but like a 3.5-star book is a good book for me. I have really enjoyed it, but there's been some aspects that have let it down. So a 3-star book is a little bit less good than that. When I talk in my wrap-ups, I generally just rate books either good, very good, or favourites of the month. Sometimes there are okay books. If there's an okay book, that was probably a 2 or 2.5 star. If there's a good book, it's probably a 3-star or a 3.5. So yes, a 3-star book is a book I've enjoyed, but it's also kind of a bit average. Maybe wasn't a book that did anything extra to impress me, or maybe was just a sort of book that I felt was a bit bog standard. I consider 3 stars to be a bit more than halfway on the star rating. So from a book that is kind of average to a book that is good, that would be my 3-star margin, I think. So question 5 is, what does 4 stars mean to you? So I've been giving 4 stars a lot more lately. I traditionally used to rate books out of 10 when I first started keeping a book journal, and I found it a lot easier to rate books out of 10, although I tended to give most books like a 7 or an 8. In the last year or so since being on Booktube, I've definitely given a lot more books 4 stars, and I think a 4-star book for me is a very good book. I have been called stingy in my star giving, and I do think that I am that in a way, because I used to, when I rated books 1 to 10, I would never give a book a 10, because I always felt, even on like my favourite books in the world, I felt like there's always still something. You never would read the perfect book. I used to not give 5 stars on that basis. However, since being on Booktube, talking to other people about books more, I feel like a 5-star book does exist for me, and it doesn't have to be perfect, is what I've learned. So yes, 4-star books, very good book. And I think the best way to explain what a 4-star book is to compare it to a 5-star book. So I'm going to skip to question 7, which is, do you rate books 5 stars often? Not really. I've rated 10 books this year 5 stars, and that's out of 105 books. So to put it into context, that is like about 10%, isn't it? So I don't rate a huge amount of books 5 stars. And the other question in the 5 stars question is, what do 5-star books do that make them rate that high? So I'm going to be sort of mingling the 4-star question and the 5-star question. A 5-star book for me is a feeling. It's a something special that elevates it for me, because you can never have complete agreement on how books rate. I think that a 5-star is the most subjective thing of all. So I think many books that I've rated 5 stars, a lot of my friends would rate 4 stars. But for me, it's that spark, it's that connection, especially a connection to the characters. If I feel a connection to a character, then a book will likely elevate itself to 5 stars. If it is a 4-star book for most of the book, but it really, really nails the ending and leaves me feeling amazing, then it'll be a 5 stars. It's just like that little extra something that a book can give you is how I see a 5-star rating as opposed to a 4-star. So if a book didn't give me that, but it was close, I will give a 4.5 star. But yes, I've definitely been more lenient in my 5 stars this past year. It's definitely for me about a personal connection to the book. And I think if it gives me that personal connection, or just something like that, it will get 5 stars. So for example, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I read earlier this year and rated 5 stars, I think there were several things in this book that I didn't love, and that's really rare for me to rate something 5 stars when there's aspects I don't love. But I just had this overwhelming feeling that it had been a 5-star read, and for that book it was about an emotional connection. I think if a book can make you feel really strong emotions and you feel like any measure of other connection to it, then that book can be 5 stars. So yeah, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is an example of a book that isn't perfect but is 5 stars in my eyes because it just absolutely destroyed me emotionally. So it can be an emotional connection as well, or it can just be that feeling that you get that like a book is just special, and that was the feeling I had with Cloud Cuckoo Land, my favourite book of last year. It was just so special to me. Just the way it brought everything together was incredible. But yes, we're not here to talk about Cloud Cuckoo Land again. I have missed out a question in the meantime, which was question 6. Do you ever do half-star ratings? I've mentioned 3.5 stars already, and I've already mentioned 4.5 stars. So I do half stars. I don't often do like a 2.5 star, but if I thought a book was doing some things I liked, or had some good element to it, but I didn't feel like I fully liked it enough to give it a 3, it could be a 2.5. For example, I gave Pod 2.5 stars. I thought that there was some interesting things that book was doing. I didn't feel like 2 stars would have been an accurate rating because it was a well-written book in its way, but I didn't really like or connect with what it was doing for most of it, and I gave most of that 2.5 stars because there was a character in it that I really loved. 3.5, I use this rating a lot. This is for if I thought a book was really good but not quite very good, not like an excellent book. A 4.5 star will be a book that has for some reason missed out on 5 stars. So it's again quite hard to get that rating. But if I really enjoyed a book, but I just don't think that it quite is a favourite, it might get 4.5 stars. So an example of a book that I think I've given 4.5 stars to this year would be Our Wives Under the Sea. I thought it was a brilliantly constructed book, a very interesting book, a very weird book, but it didn't quite hit everything for me to give it a 5 star. I just didn't have that extra connection to it, so that's why that was a 4.5. So I do give half stars, and I do think that half stars are quite important to me because for someone who used to rate on a scale of 10, I think that there are those in-betweens. Question 8, I think I've probably kind of answered, which is how has your rating of books changed over the years? And I've already said I very much think I've become more lenient with books, more open to all the different things that books are doing and the range of stuff. I don't particularly love rating books on a numerical scale. It's definitely something I've done a lot more since starting with Goodreads and Storygraph, for example, and starting on Booktube. But it's convenient, isn't it? I used to do the scale of 10 rating because I did it purely to give myself an idea of how much I liked it when I would look back on my book journal, which always surprises me looking back on my book journal, which books I've given 7 to that I would now consider like all-time favourites. But yeah, there we go. Question number 9, the final question, is where do you record your ratings of your books? I always traditionally had a book journal, which I did this with. However, I have quite recently, not been recording in a book journal on paper anymore, but I do definitely want to carry on with that and get back to that. I use both Goodreads and Storygraph. I find Storygraph easier to rate books on because you have the scale with the 0.5. I do put in a rating on Goodreads, but sometimes I will qualify it with like a 0.5 in the review section. So that's that. Now I do have a few people I would like to tag with this. I made this list in late June, so there's a high chance that lots of these people have done this video by now. If you haven't, I would love to see your thoughts on how you rate books. So the first person that sprung to mind was of course Jennifer Loves Books, because she often talks about like 1-star books and DNFing, and I'd love to hear some more about the rest of her rating scale. Heather from Reading with a Vengeance I would like to tag, Sandy from Ms Reads a Lot, Olly from Olly, who at the time I think I was buddy reading with when I wrote this list, Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, who I've recently done a buddy read with as well. I'd love to see how Jolene rates her books. And also 2 creators who I have been watching a lot for her prize content is Charlotte Malloy and Ben at Ben Reads Good, and I would love to hear how those 2 also rate their books. Consider yourself tagged if you would like to be and you're not on that list. So that's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at how I rate books. I hope you're all reading some good books, and please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will hope very much to see you all again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.